I found the notebook hidden beneath my sister's mattress while helping her move apartments, and the first page contained a detailed timeline titled, Operation Maya Breakdown, with my photo paperclipped to the corner. What I discovered in those 47 pages of meticulous planning would expose a psychological manipulation campaign so sophisticated that it had been slowly destroying my confidence, relationships, and career prospects for 3 years. The final entry, dated just 2 weeks away, outlined how she planned to have me involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility so she could assume control of our family's inheritance. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I closed that notebook, placed it exactly where I had found it, and smiled as I realized that my sister had unknowingly handed me the blueprint for my own liberation. By tomorrow evening, I would be gone without a trace, and she would discover that the person she had spent years trying to break was far stronger, smarter, and more prepared than she had ever imagined. The morning light streamed through the windows of Elena's new apartment on Maple Street as I carefully folded her sweaters into neat stacks. My sister had always been particular about organization, a trait our mother praised as evidence of Elena's superior discipline and attention to detail. What our family had never understood was that Elena's need for control extended far beyond clothing arrangements and color-coordinated calendars. I had volunteered to help with her relocation from downtown to this suburban complex, partly out of sisterly obligation, and partly because I hoped that physical distance from our childhood neighborhood might improve our relationship. Elena had been increasingly critical of my life choices over the past few years, offering unsolicited advice about my career decisions, social relationships, and personal habits, with a frequency that had begun to feel more invasive than supportive. The notebook had been concealed beneath her mattress when I lifted it to position the bed frame properly against the wall. The corner of black leather had caught my attention immediately, as Elena typically kept her personal journals in plain sight on her desk, claiming that transparency demonstrated emotional health and mature self-reflection. This hidden placement suggested contents that contradicted her usual philosophy of openness and honesty. Curiosity had compelled me to examine the notebook more closely. What I discovered inside transformed my understanding of everything that had happened to me since graduating from business school 3 years earlier. The pages contained detailed observations about my daily routines, psychological assessments of my emotional vulnerabilities, and strategic plans designed to systematically undermine my mental stability and social connections. Elena had been documenting my reactions to various forms of psychological pressure with the methodical precision of a research scientist. She had recorded which types of criticism produced the strongest emotional responses, which social situations created maximum anxiety, and which personal insecurities could be exploited most effectively to damage my self-confidence. The entries revealed a level of manipulation that exceeded anything I had previously considered possible. Elena had been orchestrating scenarios designed to make me question my own perceptions of reality. She had been spreading carefully crafted misinformation about me to mutual acquaintances, creating situations that would isolate me from potential support systems, and actively sabotaging opportunities that might have improved my circumstances or self-esteem. The timeline showed that this campaign had begun shortly after our father's death, when his will had established a trust fund that would provide substantial financial security for both Elena and me upon reaching certain life milestones. The inheritance terms required both beneficiaries to demonstrate emotional stability and sound judgment, as assessed by independent psychological evaluation before accessing the funds. Elena's notebook revealed that she had been working to ensure that I would fail this evaluation, while she presented herself as the responsible, stable sister who deserved primary control over the family assets. Her plan included documentation of my supposed mental instability, witness statements about my erratic behavior, and medical records that would support a case for involuntary psychiatric commitment. The sophistication of her approach was both terrifying and impressive. Elena had researched legal procedures for obtaining emergency psychiatric holds, identified healthcare professionals who could be convinced to support commitment proceedings, and developed strategies for presenting evidence of my declining mental health to family members and legal authorities. Reading those pages felt like discovering that someone had been slowly poisoning me while I attributed my declining health to natural causes. Every unexplained mood swing, every social interaction that had felt strangely uncomfortable, Every professional opportunity that had disappeared without clear explanation could now be traced to Elena's deliberate interventions. The most disturbing revelation was the extent to which Elena had infiltrated my personal life. She had been monitoring my social media accounts, reading my private communications through shared family devices, and gathering information from friends and colleagues under the guise of concerned sisterly interest. She had been building a comprehensive profile of my psychological vulnerabilities that she could exploit with surgical precision. The notebook documented specific incidents that I had experienced as random misfortunes, but which had actually been carefully orchestrated manipulations. The job interview that had gone inexplicably poorly after someone had called my potential employer with false information about my background. The romantic relationship that had ended abruptly when my partner had received anonymous messages containing fabricated evidence of my infidelity. The social gatherings where I had felt inexplicably anxious and unwelcome because Elena had primed other attendees with negative stories about my behavior. Each entry demonstrated how Elena had been studying my reactions to these manufactured crises, refining her understanding of which pressure points produced the most effective psychological damage. She had been treating my life as a laboratory for perfecting techniques of emotional destruction, documenting her methods with the clinical detachment of someone conducting experiments on laboratory subjects. The financial motivation underlying this campaign added another dimension of betrayal. Elena had not been targeting me out of simple sibling rivalry or personal animosity. She had been systematically destroying my mental health as part of a calculated strategy to claim exclusive control over our inheritance. The psychological torture had been purely instrumental, a means to achieve financial objectives rather than an expression of emotional dysfunction. The timeline indicated that Elena's plan was approaching its culmination. She had scheduled appointments with mental health professionals, who would evaluate my psychological state based on the documentation she had been accumulating. She had prepared family members to expect concerning behavior from me during upcoming gatherings. She had researched facilities where I could be committed and procedures for assuming legal guardianship over someone deemed mentally incompetent. The final phase of her plan involved creating a crisis situation that would provide justification for emergency psychiatric intervention. Elena had outlined scenarios where she would provoke extreme emotional reactions from me in front of witnesses, then use my responses as evidence of dangerous instability requiring immediate professional intervention. Reading these plans felt like watching my own execution being planned in meticulous detail. Elena had spent 3 years building a case for my mental breakdown, and she was prepared to manufacture the evidence necessary to complete her objective. The involuntary commitment would not only remove me as an obstacle to her inheritance claims, but would also provide retroactive justification for all the psychological manipulation she had inflicted. The notebook also revealed Elena's assessment of my character and capabilities, which provided insight into how she had underestimated my potential for strategic response. She had characterized me as emotionally reactive, socially dependent, and intellectually inferior to herself. She had assumed that I would continue responding to her manipulations with predictable patterns of anxiety, self-doubt, and social withdrawal. Elena had failed to recognize that the same intelligence and analytical abilities that she had been exploiting could also be turned toward understanding and countering her strategies. She had documented my vulnerabilities with scientific precision, but had overlooked my strengths and capacity for adaptive response when provided with complete information about the situation. The discovery of her notebook represented a transformational moment that shifted the entire dynamic of our relationship. Elena had been operating under the assumption that she controlled the flow of information and could continue manipulating my perceptions indefinitely. The revelation of her true intentions eliminated the psychological advantage she had maintained through secrecy and deception. For the first time in 3 years, I understood why my life had felt increasingly chaotic, and why my efforts to improve my circumstances had consistently failed to produce expected results. The problems had not been caused by personal inadequacies or mental health issues. They had been artificially created by someone who understood my psychology well enough to exploit it systematically. This understanding provided both clarity about the past and strategic options for the future. Elena's plan depended upon my continued cooperation with her manipulation campaign. She needed me to remain psychologically vulnerable, socially isolated, and unaware of her role in creating my difficulties. The discovery of her notebook eliminated all of these preconditions and provided me with comprehensive intelligence about her methods and objectives. The most empowering realization was that Elena's elaborate plan contained inherent vulnerabilities that could be exploited once her strategies were fully understood. She had built her campaign on assumptions about my behavior and reactions that would no longer apply once I possessed complete information about her activities. Her carefully constructed timeline and documented procedures could be disrupted by responses that she had not anticipated or prepared to handle. As I closed the notebook and returned it to its hiding place beneath her mattress, I felt a sense of calm determination that had been absent from my life for years. The person Elena had been trying to break no longer existed. In her place stood someone who understood the true nature of the conflict and possessed detailed intelligence about the enemy's plans and capabilities. The transformation was not merely psychological but strategic. Elena had unknowingly provided me with a comprehensive manual for understanding her methods, predicting her future actions, and developing countermeasures that would neutralize her advantages while exploiting her weaknesses. The hunter had become the hunted, and she would not realize the reversal until it was far too late to adjust her approach. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. By tomorrow evening, I would begin implementing a plan that would demonstrate to Elena exactly how catastrophically she had underestimated my capabilities. The sister she had been manipulating would disappear completely, replaced by someone who understood the game she had been playing and who possessed far superior skills for winning it. The notebook had been intended as documentation of my psychological destruction. Instead, it had become the blueprint for my liberation and Elena's ultimate defeat. The student was about to become the teacher, and the first lesson would be about the dangers of underestimating an opponent who has finally discovered the true rules of engagement. Before we continue with this empowering story of strategic thinking triumphing over psychological manipulation, I want to thank you for being here. If you believe that knowledge is the ultimate weapon against those who try to control us through deception, please consider subscribing. It costs nothing and helps us reach more people who need to understand that they are stronger than their circumstances suggest. The next 24 hours would prove that preparation, intelligence, and strategic patience could overcome even the most sophisticated manipulation campaigns. Elena had spent 3 years building what she believed was an inescapable trap. She was about to discover that she had actually constructed the foundation for her own downfall, and her intended victim possessed the intelligence and determination necessary to turn her weapons against her with devastating effectiveness. The weight of Elena's notebook pressed against my consciousness as I completed the final arrangements for her apartment setup, maintaining the facade of helpful sisterly cooperation while my mind raced through strategic calculations. Every interaction over the past 3 years now required complete re-examination through the lens of her documented manipulation campaign. The casual comments about my appearance that had gradually eroded my self-confidence, the seemingly innocent questions about my career prospects that had actually been intelligence-gathering operations, and the family gatherings where I had felt increasingly isolated and criticized, all revealed themselves as components of a sophisticated psychological warfare strategy. Elena returned from her meeting with the building management office, carrying a clipboard, and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who believed everything was proceeding according to plan. She surveyed the organized living space with approval, complimenting my arrangement of her belongings, while making subtle observations about my emotional state that I now recognized as data collection for her ongoing psychological assessment. "You seem quieter than usual today, Maya," she remarked while inspecting the placement of her bookshelf. "Is everything all right?" "You know you can always talk to me about whatever is bothering you." The concern in her voice would have seemed genuine to anyone unaware of her true motivations, but I now understood that every expression of sisterly care had been carefully calibrated to elicit information that could be weaponized against me later. I provided appropriately vague responses about work stress and general life pressures, feeding her the type of information that would satisfy her need for intelligence, while revealing nothing about my discovery of her notebook or my evolving understanding of our relationship dynamics. The performance required considerable self-control, as my natural inclination was to confront her immediately about the documented evidence of her betrayal. However, direct confrontation would have eliminated the strategic advantage that knowledge of her plans provided. Elena's campaign had succeeded because she had operated from the shadows while I remained unaware of her true intentions. Reversing this dynamic required maintaining the illusion that nothing had changed while I developed comprehensive countermeasures based on complete understanding of her methods and objectives. The drive home from Elena's apartment provided the first opportunity for private reflection on the implications of my discovery. The familiar streets of my neighborhood looked different when viewed through the perspective of someone who now understood that their entire social environment had been systematically compromised. Elena had not merely been targeting me as an individual. She had been manipulating my relationships with friends, family members, colleagues, and romantic partners to create an ecosystem of controlled information and manufactured social pressure. My apartment felt like a sanctuary when I finally closed the door behind me, but even this private space had been violated by Elena's surveillance activities. She had documented my daily routines with sufficient detail to suggest regular observation of my living habits, possibly through hidden cameras or tracking devices that I had never thought to search for because I had trusted her completely. The systematic search of my apartment revealed 3 small recording devices concealed in locations that provided optimal coverage of my living and working spaces. Elena had been monitoring my phone conversations, private meetings, and personal activities for months, gathering intelligence that she had used to predict my behavior and manipulate my responses to various situations. The discovery of this surveillance equipment marked the beginning of my transition from victim to strategic opponent. Elena had taught me, through her documented methods, that information superiority was the foundation of psychological dominance. Her mistake had been assuming that I lacked the intelligence and determination necessary to turn her own techniques against her, once I understood how the game was being played. The evening hours were devoted to comprehensive analysis of Elena's notebook, which revealed patterns and strategies that extended far beyond what I had initially understood. Her manipulation campaign had been structured according to principles of psychological conditioning, with specific triggers designed to produce predictable emotional responses that could be escalated or moderated depending on her immediate objectives. She had identified my core vulnerabilities through careful observation and experimentation, then developed systematic approaches for exploiting each weakness while preventing me from developing effective coping mechanisms or support systems. The sophistication of her psychological profiling suggested extensive research into manipulation techniques and possibly consultation with mental health professionals who had unknowingly provided her with clinical insights that she had weaponized for personal gain. The documentation revealed that Elena had been testing various approaches for breaking down my psychological defenses, measuring the effectiveness of different strategies through careful observation of my behavioral responses. She had treated our relationship as a controlled experiment, with herself as the researcher and me as the unwitting subject of increasingly sophisticated psychological manipulation protocols. Each entry demonstrated her growing confidence in her ability to predict and control my reactions to manufactured situations. She had developed detailed profiles of my emotional triggers, social anxieties, and cognitive biases, then systematically exploited this knowledge to create circumstances that would maximize psychological damage while minimizing the risk of detection. The financial motivation underlying her campaign had required long-term strategic thinking that impressed me despite its malicious intent. Elena had recognized that our father's inheritance conditions would require evidence of my mental instability and her comparative emotional fitness, so she had begun building this case years in advance of when it would become legally relevant. Her approach had involved creating documentation that would satisfy legal and medical professionals who would be evaluating our respective psychological states. She had been manufacturing evidence of my declining mental health, while simultaneously establishing herself as the concerned, responsible sister who had been trying to help me address my problems through appropriate channels. The notebook contained copies of communications she had sent to mental health professionals, describing my supposed symptoms and requesting guidance about intervention strategies. These professionals had provided advice intended to help a concerned family member support someone with emerging psychological issues, never realizing that their clinical insights were being used to perfect techniques for inducing the very problems they thought they were helping to address. Elena had also been cultivating relationships with family members and mutual acquaintances, positioning herself as the primary source of information about my condition, while gradually conditioning them to expect concerning behavior from me. Her strategy had involved sharing carefully edited accounts of my actions and statements, creating a narrative of progressive mental deterioration that would make her eventual claims of dangerous instability seem credible and well documented. The psychological manipulation had been complemented by practical sabotage designed to create external pressures that would exacerbate my emotional vulnerability. Elena had been interfering with my professional opportunities, social relationships, and financial stability in ways that appeared to be unrelated coincidences but which were actually coordinated attacks designed to overwhelm my capacity for effective response. She had contacted potential employers with fabricated concerns about my reliability and emotional stability, causing job opportunities to disappear without explanation. She had spread rumors about my personal life that damaged my reputation within social circles that were important to my emotional well-being. She had created financial pressures through various subtle means that forced me to make decisions that she could later characterize as evidence of poor judgment or declining mental capacity. The cumulative effect of these interventions had been to isolate me from support systems while creating a documentary record that supported her narrative of my psychological deterioration. Each manufactured crisis had served dual purposes, causing immediate emotional damage while generating evidence that could be used to justify more extreme interventions in the future. The notebook revealed that Elena had been particularly focused on undermining my romantic relationships, recognizing that emotional support from intimate partners represented the greatest threat to her manipulation campaign. She had systematically sabotaged my connections with potential romantic partners through anonymous communications, fabricated evidence, and strategic manipulation of social situations designed to create conflict and mistrust. Her interventions had been timed to coincide with moments when these relationships were developing genuine intimacy and emotional significance, maximizing the psychological impact of their destruction while ensuring that I would attribute the failures to personal inadequacies rather than external interference. The pattern of relationship sabotage had been designed to reinforce my sense of social isolation, while damaging my confidence in my ability to maintain meaningful connections with others. The professional sabotage had been equally sophisticated, involving research into the specific industries and organizations where I had been seeking employment. Elena had identified key decision-makers and influential figures within these environments, then provided them with information that would create doubt about my suitability without being so dramatic as to trigger investigation or verification efforts. Her approach had involved presenting herself as a concerned family member who wanted to ensure that I received appropriate support in professional environments, while actually providing information that would make employers reluctant to hire me or invest in my professional development. The subtlety of this approach had made it nearly impossible to detect without access to her documentation, as the sabotage had been disguised as expressions of familial concern and protective instinct. The financial manipulation had been the most insidious aspect of her campaign, involving complex strategies designed to create economic pressures that would force me to make decisions that could later be characterized as evidence of impaired judgment. Elena had been creating situations that would generate unexpected expenses, reduce my income potential, and limit my access to financial resources that might have provided stability during periods of emotional stress. She had manipulated my credit rating through identity theft techniques that were difficult to trace back to their source. She had interfered with my access to family financial resources by spreading concerns about my money management capabilities to relatives who might have provided support during difficult periods. She had created false emergencies that required immediate financial responses, depleting my savings and forcing me to rely on credit that would later become unmanageable. The psychological conditioning aspect of her campaign had been the most sophisticated element, involving systematic desensitization to manipulation combined with strategic reinforcement of dependency behaviors. Elena had been training me to doubt my own perceptions while becoming increasingly reliant on her interpretation of events and guidance about appropriate responses to various situations. This conditioning had involved creating situations where my natural responses were consistently ineffective or counterproductive, then positioning herself as the source of wisdom about more appropriate approaches. Over time, this had eroded my confidence in my own judgment, while increasing my psychological dependency on her guidance and approval. The notebook documented specific techniques she had used to induce learned helplessness, a psychological condition where victims become passive and accepting of negative circumstances because they have been conditioned to believe that resistance is futile. Elena had been systematically undermining my sense of personal agency, while reinforcing the belief that my problems were caused by character flaws or mental health issues, rather than external manipulation. Reading these documented strategies provided both clarity about how my psychological state had deteriorated and practical knowledge about how to reverse the conditioning effects that Elena had been cultivating. Understanding her methods eliminated their power over me while providing insights into her vulnerabilities and strategic weaknesses that could be exploited in my response campaign. The discovery of Elena's surveillance equipment and manipulation strategies had transformed me from an unwitting victim into an informed opponent with comprehensive intelligence about enemy capabilities and intentions. The psychological advantage had shifted completely, as Elena continued to operate under the assumption that I remained unaware of her activities, while I now possessed detailed knowledge of her plans and methods. This information superiority provided the foundation for developing countermeasures that would neutralize Elena's advantages while exploiting her overconfidence and strategic blind spots. She had spent 3 years teaching me, through her documented methods, exactly how psychological warfare was conducted at the highest levels of sophistication. The student was about to demonstrate that she had learned these lessons thoroughly and was prepared to apply them with devastating effectiveness against her teacher. Elena's notebook had been intended as documentation of my destruction, but it had actually become the curriculum for my education in advanced manipulation techniques that I would soon be using to orchestrate her complete defeat. The preparation phase was now complete. Tomorrow would begin the implementation of strategies that would prove to Elena exactly how catastrophically she had underestimated my capabilities and determination. The foundation had been built, and it was time to construct the architecture of her downfall using the blueprints she had so thoughtfully provided. The first light of dawn illuminated my kitchen table where Elena's notebook lay open beside 3 legal pads filled with strategic analysis and counterintelligence planning. The past 18 hours had been devoted to comprehensive study of psychological warfare principles, legal procedures surrounding involuntary commitment, and financial regulations governing inheritance disputes. Elena had provided me with a detailed curriculum through her documented methods, and I had been conducting intensive graduate-level coursework in manipulation tactics and defensive countermeasures. The transformation from victim to strategic opponent required more than emotional resolution and righteous anger. Elena's campaign had succeeded because she possessed superior knowledge of psychological manipulation techniques combined with systematic understanding of the legal and financial systems she planned to exploit. Matching her capabilities demanded acquiring equivalent expertise in these domains, while developing innovative approaches that would exploit her overconfidence and strategic blind spots. My professional background in data analysis and project management provided foundational skills that translated effectively to intelligence gathering and strategic planning. The same methodologies I used to identify patterns in market research data could be applied to understanding behavioral triggers and psychological vulnerabilities. The project management frameworks I employed for coordinating complex business initiatives were directly applicable to orchestrating multi-phase psychological operations with precise timing and resource allocation. Elena's notebook served as both intelligence treasure trove and educational textbook, revealing not only her specific plans, but also the theoretical frameworks underlying her approach. She had clearly studied advanced psychological manipulation techniques, possibly through academic coursework or professional consultation with mental health practitioners. Her documented methods demonstrated familiarity with cognitive behavioral therapy principles, social psychology research, and clinical approaches to behavioral modification. The sophistication of her surveillance operations suggested technical capabilities that extended beyond casual observation and eavesdropping. The recording devices I had discovered in my apartment were professional-grade equipment that required specialized knowledge to install and operate effectively. Elena had invested considerable resources in developing comprehensive intelligence-gathering capabilities, indicating that her commitment to this campaign extended far beyond casual sibling rivalry. Her financial analysis of our father's inheritance terms revealed detailed understanding of trust fund administration, legal requirements for competency determination, and procedures for challenging inheritance distributions through psychiatric evaluation. Elena had researched these topics thoroughly, consulting with legal professionals and financial advisors to ensure that her strategy would satisfy the evidentiary standards required for successful implementation. The notebook contained correspondence with attorneys specializing in estate disputes and mental health law, though these professionals appeared to believe they were advising someone genuinely concerned about a family member's psychological welfare. Elena had presented herself as a responsible sister, seeking guidance about protecting both family assets and her siblings' well-being, never revealing her true intentions to manipulate the legal system for personal financial gain. This deception extended to her interactions with mental health professionals, whom she had consulted under the pretense of seeking advice about supporting a family member experiencing psychological difficulties. These consultations had provided her with clinical insights about diagnostic criteria, intervention strategies, and documentation requirements that she had weaponized for manufacturing evidence of my supposed mental instability. The systematic nature of Elena's approach demanded equally systematic countermeasures, based on comprehensive understanding of her methods and objectives. My response strategy required development across multiple domains simultaneously, including psychological warfare techniques, legal defensive measures, financial protection strategies, and operational security protocols that would prevent Elena from detecting my preparations until implementation was complete. The psychological component demanded intensive study of manipulation techniques and defensive countermeasures. Elena had been exploiting specific cognitive biases and emotional vulnerabilities that she had identified through careful observation and experimentation. Neutralizing these advantages required understanding the psychological principles underlying her methods while developing immunity to the conditioning effects she had been cultivating over 3 years. Research into psychological resilience and mental fortification revealed that victims of systematic manipulation could recover their psychological autonomy through a combination of cognitive restructuring, emotional regulation training, and strategic exposure to controlled challenges that rebuilt confidence in personal judgment and decision-making capabilities. The process required patience and systematic application, but the documented success rate suggested that complete recovery was achievable with appropriate commitment and methodology. The legal research focused on understanding Elena's planned approach to involuntary commitment proceedings, while identifying defensive strategies that would neutralize her advantages and expose her manipulation campaign to legal scrutiny. Involuntary psychiatric commitment required specific evidentiary standards that Elena had been working to satisfy through her documentation and witness preparation activities. However, these same legal standards provided protection mechanisms for individuals targeted by false commitment attempts. The psychiatric evaluation process included safeguards designed to prevent abuse of the commitment system for personal gain, and Elena's elaborate manipulation campaign would be extremely vulnerable to exposure if properly presented to qualified mental health professionals and legal authorities. The financial protection strategy required understanding trust fund administration procedures while developing approaches that would preserve my inheritance rights regardless of Elena's legal maneuvers. The trust fund terms included specific provisions for challenging competency determinations and disputing allegations of mental instability, though these protections would be effective only if implemented before Elena could establish legal momentum for her narrative. Operational security considerations demanded comprehensive assessment of Elena's surveillance capabilities while developing communication and movement protocols that would prevent her from monitoring my activities during the implementation phase. The recording devices I had discovered represented only the surveillance methods I had detected, and Elena likely possessed additional monitoring capabilities that remained concealed. The strategic planning process revealed that Elena's campaign contained several critical vulnerabilities that could be exploited through carefully coordinated counter-operations. Her documented timeline created predictable patterns that could be disrupted through unexpected responses that would force her to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances without adequate preparation time. Elena's psychological profile of my personality and behavioral patterns was based on 3 years of observation, but this assessment had been conducted while I remained unaware of her manipulation activities. Her predictions about my responses to various stimuli would become increasingly inaccurate once I began operating with complete knowledge of her methods and strategic objectives. Her reliance on family members and mutual acquaintances as sources of information and support for her narrative created communication channels that could be manipulated to provide Elena with false intelligence while gathering information about her activities and plans. The same social networks she had been exploiting could be transformed into counterintelligence assets once properly understood and strategically managed. The legal and medical professionals Elena had been consulting represented potential sources of evidence about her true intentions and manipulative methods. These individuals had been providing advice and services while believing they were supporting legitimate efforts to help someone with mental health challenges. Documentation of Elena's deceptive practices would be extremely valuable for exposing her campaign to legal and professional scrutiny. The implementation strategy required careful sequencing of operations that would maximize psychological impact while minimizing Elena's opportunities for effective countermeasures. The disappearance phase needed to be executed with sufficient sophistication to prevent Elena from locating me while ensuring that my absence would create maximum anxiety and uncertainty about my activities and intentions. Geographic research identified multiple locations that would provide secure operational bases while remaining outside Elena's likely search parameters. These locations offered secure communication capabilities, access to legal and financial resources, and sufficient distance from our usual social and professional networks to prevent accidental detection during extended operations. The communication strategy involved establishing secure channels that would allow me to monitor Elena's activities while preventing her from gathering intelligence about my location or plans. Modern technology provided numerous options for anonymous communication and remote surveillance that would enable comprehensive intelligence gathering without physical proximity or direct contact. Financial preparation required securing access to resources that Elena could not monitor or interfere with, while ensuring that her potential legal maneuvers would not compromise my ability to fund extended operations or legal defense activities. The trust fund terms included provisions for emergency access to inheritance assets under specific circumstances that could be activated if Elena's campaign escalated to direct legal action. The psychological preparation phase demanded intensive mental conditioning, designed to eliminate the emotional vulnerabilities that Elena had been exploiting, while developing the psychological resilience necessary for sustained psychological warfare operations. This preparation included stress inoculation training, emotional regulation techniques, and confidence-building exercises that would restore my natural psychological defenses. Documentation requirements included comprehensive evidence gathering about Elena's manipulation campaign, systematic recording of her activities and communications, and preparation of materials that would support legal action if circumstances required formal intervention by authorities. The evidence needed to satisfy legal standards while remaining secure from Elena's surveillance and interference capabilities. The timing considerations required coordination of multiple simultaneous operations while maintaining operational security and preventing Elena from detecting preparation activities. The disappearance needed to occur at a moment when Elena would be psychologically unprepared for this response, while positioned to observe her reactions and adapt to her countermeasures in real time. Personal preparation included physical conditioning, resource stockpiling, and skill development activities that would support extended independent operations without reliance on traditional support systems that Elena might monitor or compromise. The psychological warfare would require sustained performance under significant stress, demanding optimal physical and mental condition throughout the implementation period. The research phase had revealed that Elena's apparent psychological sophistication masked significant strategic weaknesses that could be exploited through innovative approaches she would not anticipate or prepare to counter. Her documented methods demonstrated expertise in manipulation techniques but revealed limited understanding of advanced counterintelligence operations and psychological warfare defense strategies. Elena had been operating under the assumption that I would continue responding to her manipulations with predictable patterns of emotional vulnerability and social dependency. Her strategic planning was based on psychological assessments that would become obsolete once I began operating with complete knowledge of her activities and systematic preparation for psychological warfare operations. The comprehensive analysis revealed that Elena's elaborate 3-year campaign had actually provided me with unprecedented educational opportunities in advanced psychological manipulation, while creating the strategic foundation for her own defeat. She had been teaching me, through her documented methods, exactly how sophisticated psychological warfare was conducted, while unknowingly providing the intelligence necessary for developing superior countermeasures. The architecture of systematic learning was now complete. Elena's notebook had served as curriculum for intensive education in psychological warfare, legal strategy, financial protection, and operational planning. The student had become thoroughly prepared to demonstrate practical application of these lessons in ways that would prove to Elena exactly how catastrophically she had underestimated both my learning capacity and my determination to achieve complete victory. The disappearance would begin tomorrow, marking the transition from preparation to implementation. Elena would discover that the person she had spent 3 years trying to break had instead been forged into someone far more dangerous than she could have imagined. The systematic learning phase was complete, and the practical examination was about to commence. The psychology of maintaining unwavering focus during extended psychological warfare requires understanding that mental resilience operates according to principles that can be systematically developed and strategically applied. Elena's documented manipulation campaign had succeeded precisely because she understood these psychological principles better than her target, exploiting cognitive vulnerabilities while preventing the development of effective mental defenses. Reversing this dynamic demanded comprehensive mastery of psychological fortification techniques combined with strategic vision that extended beyond immediate tactical concerns. The mental frameworks necessary for sustained psychological warfare begin with absolute clarity about ultimate objectives and unwavering commitment to achieving those objectives regardless of temporary setbacks or emotional pressures. Elena had maintained her manipulation campaign for 3 years because she possessed clear financial motivation and systematic methodology for achieving her goals. Matching her psychological persistence required equivalent clarity about my own objectives while developing superior strategic patience and tactical flexibility. My primary objective extended beyond simply defeating Elena's immediate plans for involuntary commitment and inheritance manipulation. The ultimate goal involved complete exposure of her psychological manipulation campaign while establishing irrefutable documentation of her deliberate attempts to destroy my mental health for financial gain. This objective required sustained operations that would gather comprehensive evidence while demonstrating to family members, legal authorities, and mental health professionals that Elena represented the genuine psychological threat to family welfare. The secondary objective focused on personal transformation through practical application of advanced psychological warfare principles. Elena had unknowingly provided me with intensive education in manipulation techniques, behavioral analysis, and strategic planning methodologies that represented valuable skills for future personal and professional endeavors. The disappearance operation would serve as comprehensive field testing of these capabilities, while establishing my credibility as someone who possessed expertise in areas that most people never have opportunity to develop. The tertiary objective involved creating a documented case study that could serve as educational resource for other individuals experiencing systematic psychological manipulation by family members or intimate partners. Elena's notebook provided unprecedented insight into how sophisticated manipulation campaigns are structured and implemented, while my response would demonstrate practical methods for identifying, analyzing, and countering these techniques through strategic planning and disciplined execution. Maintaining persistent vision during psychological warfare requires systematic management of emotional responses to prevent temporary setbacks from compromising long-term strategic objectives. Elena had been successful in undermining my confidence and decision-making capabilities because she understood how to exploit emotional reactivity while preventing the development of rational analytical frameworks for understanding the manipulation dynamics. The psychological conditioning necessary for sustained operations involved developing emotional regulation techniques that would maintain strategic clarity regardless of Elena's attempts to provoke reactive responses. This conditioning required systematic exposure to controlled stress situations that would build psychological resilience while testing defensive capabilities under realistic operational conditions. Meditation practices provided foundational training for maintaining mental clarity during high-stress situations. while developing the cognitive discipline necessary for sustained analytical thinking under pressure. The meditation techniques focused specifically on observing emotional responses without becoming overwhelmed by their intensity, creating psychological distance that would enable strategic decision-making even when experiencing significant emotional stress. Physical conditioning complemented mental preparation by establishing physiological resilience that would support cognitive performance during extended periods of operational stress. Regular exercise, proper nutrition, and adequate sleep patterns created the biological foundation for sustained psychological performance while reducing vulnerability to stress-induced cognitive impairment. The strategic patience required for extended psychological warfare operations demanded understanding that ultimate victory often requires accepting temporary tactical disadvantages while maintaining focus on long-term strategic objectives. Elena's manipulation campaign had succeeded because she understood that psychological damage accumulates gradually over time, with each small victory building toward comprehensive psychological dominance. Reversing this dynamic required accepting that recovery and counterattack would similarly require extended time periods with systematic application of superior strategies. The disappearance operation represented only the initial phase of a comprehensive campaign that would unfold over months rather than days, with each phase building strategic advantage while gathering evidence and demonstrating capabilities. The mental discipline necessary for maintaining operational security during extended covert operations required systematic compartmentalization of information while developing secure communication and planning protocols. Elena's surveillance capabilities demanded assumption that all traditional communication channels were compromised, requiring development of alternative methods for information gathering and strategic coordination. Digital security measures included comprehensive analysis of electronic communication vulnerabilities while establishing secure protocols for internet access, financial transactions, and information storage that would prevent Elena from monitoring my activities or gathering intelligence about my location and plans. These measures required technical expertise that extended beyond casual privacy concerns, demanding professional-level understanding of digital surveillance and counterintelligence techniques. Physical security considerations required systematic assessment of Elena's potential capabilities for locating and monitoring my activities through traditional investigative methods. Her documented surveillance operations suggested access to resources and expertise that extended beyond amateur-level snooping, potentially including professional investigative services or technical surveillance equipment. The psychological warfare strategy required understanding that Elena's confidence in her manipulation capabilities represented her greatest vulnerability to unexpected tactical approaches. Her documented assessment of my personality and behavioral patterns was based on 3 years of observation during which I remained unaware of her activities and responded to her manipulations with predictable emotional reactions. Elena's strategic planning assumed that I would continue exhibiting the same psychological vulnerabilities and behavioral patterns that she had been exploiting throughout her campaign. This assumption created opportunities for implementing responses that would violate her expectations, while forcing her to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances without adequate preparation or intelligence about my actual capabilities. The disappearance operation was designed to exploit Elena's psychological dependence on maintaining surveillance and control over my activities. Her manipulation campaign required continuous monitoring of my emotional state and behavioral responses to ensure that her interventions were producing desired psychological effects. Sudden loss of this surveillance capability would create significant anxiety while forcing her to operate with incomplete information about my location and activities. The timing of the disappearance required coordination with Elena's documented timeline for implementing the final phases of her manipulation campaign. Her notebook indicated that she had scheduled critical appointments and interventions for specific dates, creating time pressures that would prevent her from adjusting her strategy to accommodate unexpected developments. Implementing the disappearance during this critical period would maximize psychological pressure while disrupting her carefully coordinated plans at the moment when adaptation would be most difficult. Elena would be forced to choose between postponing her scheduled interventions and proceeding with incomplete information about my psychological state and whereabouts. The psychological impact of the disappearance would be amplified by Elena's knowledge that I had access to her apartment and personal belongings during the period immediately preceding my vanishing. She would be forced to consider the possibility that I had discovered evidence of her manipulation campaign, while remaining uncertain about the extent of my knowledge and the implications for her strategic position. This uncertainty would create paranoia that would interfere with Elena's decision-making capabilities, while forcing her to devote significant mental resources to analyzing potential threats and vulnerabilities that she had not previously considered. The psychological pressure would increase over time as she remained unable to locate me or gather intelligence about my activities and intentions. The strategic communication plan involved establishing controlled information channels that would allow me to monitor Elena's responses, while providing carefully selected intelligence designed to increase her anxiety and uncertainty. These communications would be structured to suggest comprehensive knowledge of her activities, while avoiding specific revelations that would enable her to assess the full extent of my strategic capabilities. The psychological manipulation techniques would exploit Elena's own emotional vulnerabilities and cognitive biases, while using her documented methods against her, with superior strategic coordination and tactical innovation. Elena had revealed her psychological profile through her notebook entries, providing insight into her motivations, fears, and strategic blind spots that could be systematically exploited. Her documented obsession with control and strategic superiority suggested that uncertainty and loss of information advantage would produce significant psychological distress. Her financial motivation indicated that threats to her inheritance objectives would generate emotional responses that could interfere with rational strategic planning. The evidence-gathering strategy required systematic documentation of Elena's responses to the disappearance, while maintaining operational security and preventing her from gathering counterintelligence about my activities. This documentation would serve multiple purposes, including legal evidence for potential future proceedings and psychological intelligence for optimizing tactical approaches during subsequent phases of the operation. The legal preparation involved consultation with attorneys specializing in psychological abuse cases and inheritance disputes, establishing potential options for formal legal intervention if Elena's responses to the disappearance escalated to activities that warranted official action. These consultations required careful consideration of attorney-client privilege while ensuring that legal resources would be available if circumstances required formal legal response. The family communication strategy required systematic assessment of Elena's influence over family relationships, while developing approaches for neutralizing her narrative advantages and establishing alternative information sources. Elena had spent 3 years positioning herself as the reliable family member while undermining my credibility, creating communication challenges that would require sophisticated strategic approaches to overcome. The psychological preparation for extended isolation during the disappearance phase required systematic development of mental disciplines that would maintain strategic focus while preventing the social isolation from creating vulnerabilities that Elena could exploit. Extended periods without normal social contact could produce psychological effects that would interfere with strategic decision-making unless properly managed through structured mental exercises and communication protocols. The resource management strategy involved securing financial access and logistical support that would enable sustained operations without dependence on traditional systems that Elena might monitor or compromise. This preparation required careful analysis of Elena's potential capabilities for interfering with banking, employment, and housing arrangements that could be used to force my return or compromise operational effectiveness. The contingency planning process involved systematic analysis of potential Elena responses to the disappearance, while developing appropriate tactical adjustments for various scenarios. Elena's psychological profile and documented strategic capabilities suggested several likely response patterns, each requiring specific countermeasures and strategic adaptations. The personal transformation objectives required understanding that the psychological warfare operation represented unprecedented opportunity for developing capabilities and confidence that would provide permanent advantages in future personal and professional relationships. The skills developed during this campaign would establish psychological resilience and strategic thinking abilities that would serve as valuable assets regardless of the specific outcome of the conflict with Elena. The vision of ultimate success extended beyond defeating Elena's manipulation campaign to establishing myself as someone who possessed advanced psychological warfare capabilities, combined with the strategic patience and tactical innovation necessary for achieving victory against sophisticated opponents. This transformation would serve as permanent foundation for future success, while providing inspiration for others facing similar psychological manipulation situations. The psychology of persistent vision required absolute confidence that strategic preparation combined with disciplined execution would ultimately prevail against any manipulation campaign, regardless of its initial sophistication or apparent advantages. Elena had unknowingly provided comprehensive education in psychological warfare while creating the strategic foundation for her own defeat through overconfidence and systematic underestimation of her opponent's learning capacity and determination. Tomorrow would begin the practical demonstration that persistent vision combined with strategic preparation could overcome any psychological manipulation campaign when applied with sufficient intelligence and unwavering commitment to ultimate victory. The transformation from strategic planning to operational implementation required systematic development of daily disciplines that would support extended covert operations while maintaining the psychological resilience necessary for sustained psychological warfare. Elena's documented manipulation campaign had succeeded because she understood that consistent daily actions, accumulated over extended time periods, produce far more significant results than dramatic single interventions. Mastering her own methodology demanded developing superior daily disciplines that would compound strategic advantages while building the operational capabilities necessary for comprehensive victory. The morning routine established the foundation for maintaining strategic focus and operational security throughout each day of preparation. The discipline began at 5:30 each morning with meditation practices specifically designed to maintain mental clarity, while developing the cognitive control necessary for managing complex strategic operations under psychological pressure. These meditation sessions focused on observing thoughts and emotions without becoming overwhelmed by their content, creating the psychological distance necessary for rational strategic decision-making, even when experiencing significant stress or uncertainty. Physical conditioning formed the second component of the morning routine, incorporating cardiovascular training, strength building, and flexibility maintenance that would support sustained performance during extended periods of operational stress. The physical preparation served multiple strategic purposes beyond basic health maintenance, including stress management, confidence building, and developing the physical capabilities that might become necessary if Elena's responses to the disappearance escalated beyond psychological manipulation into more direct forms of confrontation or harassment. The intellectual preparation phase involved systematic study of advanced psychological warfare techniques, legal procedures, and counterintelligence methodologies that would enhance strategic capabilities while expanding understanding of potential tactical options. This educational component required disciplined daily commitment to acquiring knowledge that extended far beyond Elena's documented expertise, ensuring that the strategic capabilities developed during this preparation period would provide permanent advantages in future personal and professional situations. Elena's notebook served as primary curriculum for understanding psychological manipulation techniques, but the educational program extended far beyond analyzing her specific methods. Comprehensive study of academic research in social psychology, behavioral modification, and influence techniques provided theoretical foundations that would support innovative tactical approaches while revealing strategic possibilities that Elena had not considered or documented. Legal research focused on understanding the procedural requirements and evidentiary standards that governed involuntary psychiatric commitment proceedings, inheritance disputes, and psychological abuse cases. This knowledge would serve defensive purposes by ensuring that Elena's planned legal maneuvers could be effectively countered, while also providing offensive capabilities for potential future legal action if her responses to the disappearance warranted formal intervention by authorities. The counterintelligence education involves studying surveillance detection techniques, secure communication protocols, and operational security methodologies that would enable sustained covert operations without detection by Elena or any professional investigative resources she might employ. These skills required practical application and continuous refinement, transforming theoretical knowledge into operational capabilities through systematic daily practice and testing. Financial preparation required systematic analysis of asset protection strategies while establishing secure access to resources that would support extended operations without dependence on traditional banking or employment systems that Elena might monitor or attempt to compromise. The financial disciplines included developing alternative income sources, establishing secure communication channels with financial institutions, and creating contingency plans for accessing inheritance assets if Elena's legal maneuvers required immediate defensive response. The operational security routine involved daily assessment of potential surveillance threats while implementing countermeasures designed to prevent Elena from gathering intelligence about preparation activities. These disciplines included systematic variation of daily routines to prevent predictable patterns that could be exploited for surveillance purposes, regular examination of personal belongings and living spaces for evidence of monitoring devices, and careful analysis of social interactions to identify potential information-gathering attempts by Elena or her associates. Digital security measures required daily attention to communication protocols, internet access procedures, and information storage practices that would prevent Elena from monitoring electronic activities or gathering intelligence about strategic planning and preparation efforts. These measures demanded technical expertise that extended beyond casual privacy concerns, requiring professional-level understanding of digital surveillance threats and appropriate countermeasures. The evidence documentation discipline involved systematic recording of Elena's activities, communications, and behavioral patterns, while maintaining secure storage of materials that would support potential future legal proceedings or family interventions. This documentation required careful attention to legal standards for admissible evidence, while ensuring that the collection and storage processes would not compromise operational security or provide Elena with intelligence about ongoing surveillance of her activities. Strategic communication planning required daily analysis of Elena's psychological state and tactical position while developing approaches for controlled information release that would maximize psychological pressure while maintaining strategic advantages. These communications needed to be carefully crafted to suggest comprehensive knowledge of her manipulation campaign while avoiding specific revelations that would enable her to assess the full extent of strategic capabilities and preparation efforts. The psychological conditioning component involved daily exercises designed to build immunity to manipulation techniques, while developing emotional regulation capabilities that would maintain strategic clarity under intense psychological pressure. These exercises included systematic exposure to controlled stress situations, practice with specific responses to various manipulation tactics, and development of cognitive frameworks that would prevent Elena's psychological warfare techniques from producing their intended emotional effects. Relationship management disciplines required systematic analysis of family dynamics and social connections, while developing strategies for neutralizing Elena's influence over mutual acquaintances and family members. These efforts demanded careful consideration of communication approaches that would reveal Elena's manipulation activities, without appearing to be launching unfounded attacks on her reputation or character. The daily discipline structure required precise time management and priority allocation that would ensure adequate attention to all strategic preparation areas while maintaining normal daily activities that would prevent Elena from detecting unusual behavioral patterns. This balance demanded systematic efficiency in all routine activities while developing sophisticated multitasking capabilities that would enable continuous strategic preparation without compromising operational security. Morning strategic planning sessions involved comprehensive review of Elena's documented timeline and behavioral patterns while analyzing potential tactical opportunities and strategic developments that might require adaptation of operational plans. These sessions required disciplined analytical thinking, combined with creative strategic innovation, developing multiple contingency plans while maintaining focus on primary strategic objectives. Afternoon implementation activities involved practical application of surveillance detection techniques, secure communication protocols, and evidence-gathering procedures, while conducting normal daily activities that would maintain Elena's confidence in her strategic position. These activities required sophisticated performance capabilities, presenting normal behavioral patterns while actually conducting advanced counterintelligence operations. Evening analysis sessions involved systematic review of daily observations and intelligence gathering, while updating strategic assessments and tactical plans based on new information about Elena's activities and psychological state. These sessions required disciplined commitment to continuous learning and strategic adaptation, treating each day as educational opportunity for improving operational capabilities and strategic understanding. The resource development discipline involved daily efforts to expand capabilities and strategic options, while building relationships and assets that would support extended operations or potential escalation scenarios. These efforts included developing technical skills, establishing secure communication channels, and building professional relationships that might provide assistance or expertise if circumstances required additional strategic resources. Physical security awareness required daily attention to personal safety considerations while implementing protective measures that would prevent Elena from escalating beyond psychological manipulation into more direct forms of harassment or intimidation. These measures included awareness of surveillance threats, development of secure transportation protocols, and establishment of safe communication and meeting procedures. The strategic patience discipline involved daily reinforcement of long-term strategic objectives, while resisting temptation to implement tactical responses that might provide immediate satisfaction but would compromise ultimate strategic success. This discipline required systematic mental exercises that would maintain focus on comprehensive victory rather than immediate tactical advantages that might alert Elena to changing strategic dynamics. Quality control procedures required daily assessment of operational security measures while testing strategic assumptions and tactical approaches for potential vulnerabilities that Elena might exploit if she became aware of preparation activities. These assessments demanded objective analysis of personal performance while identifying areas requiring additional preparation or strategic refinement. The learning optimization discipline involved daily reflection on educational progress while identifying areas requiring additional study or practical application. This systematic approach to capability development ensured that strategic preparation would continue advancing toward comprehensive mastery of psychological warfare principles, while building confidence in ability to implement sophisticated tactical approaches. Communication security practices required daily attention to all interactions with family members, mutual acquaintances, and professional contacts, while ensuring that routine communications would not provide Elena with intelligence about changing strategic position or preparation activities. These practices demanded sophisticated social performance capabilities while maintaining authentic relationships that would provide support and resources during operational implementation. The strategic deception component involved daily practice with maintaining normal behavioral patterns while actually conducting comprehensive preparation for psychological warfare operations. This deception required advanced acting capabilities combined with systematic attention to detail, ensuring that Elena would remain confident in her strategic assessments until the moment when operational implementation would reveal the complete transformation that had occurred during the preparation period. Financial security disciplines required daily monitoring of asset protection measures while ensuring that Elena's potential interference attempts would not compromise access to resources necessary for extended operations. These measures included diversification of financial resources, establishment of secure communication with financial institutions, and development of alternative resource access methods that would maintain operational capabilities regardless of Elena's tactical responses. The strategic intelligence discipline involved daily analysis of Elena's documented behavioral patterns, while developing increasingly sophisticated understanding of her psychological vulnerabilities and strategic blind spots. This analysis required systematic application of behavioral assessment techniques while maintaining objective analytical perspective that would prevent emotional reactions from compromising strategic judgment. Personal development activities required daily commitment to building capabilities that would provide permanent advantages beyond the immediate conflict with Elena. These activities included leadership skill development, advanced communication techniques, and strategic thinking methodologies that would serve as valuable assets in future personal and professional situations. The daily discipline structure created systematic transformation from someone who had been victimized by psychological manipulation into someone who possessed advanced strategic capabilities combined with the operational discipline necessary for implementing sophisticated psychological warfare campaigns. Elena had unknowingly provided comprehensive education in manipulation techniques while creating the strategic foundation for developing superior capabilities through systematic daily application of advanced strategic principles. The laboratory of daily discipline had transformed theoretical knowledge into practical capabilities while building the psychological resilience and strategic confidence necessary for comprehensive victory. Tomorrow would begin the practical demonstration that systematic daily preparation could enable anyone to overcome sophisticated psychological manipulation campaigns when applied with sufficient intelligence and unwavering commitment to strategic excellence. The fundamental principle of strategic positioning involves identifying and exploiting asymmetric advantages that provide superior outcomes through unconventional approaches, rather than direct competition using conventional methods. Elena's manipulation campaign had succeeded because she understood how to position herself as the concerned, responsible family member, while simultaneously positioning me as increasingly unstable and unreliable. Reversing this dynamic required developing strategic positioning that would exploit Elena's overconfidence, while establishing information advantages that she could neither detect nor counter effectively. The geographic positioning strategy began with systematic analysis of locations that would provide operational advantages while remaining outside Elena's probable search parameters and surveillance capabilities. The optimal location needed to satisfy multiple strategic requirements simultaneously, including secure communication access, proximity to legal and financial resources, sufficient distance from familiar social networks to prevent accidental detection, and geographic features that would enable rapid relocation if circumstances required additional security measures. Research into Elena's behavioral patterns and documented preferences revealed predictable search methodologies based on her psychological profile and strategic assumptions about my likely responses to stress and isolation. Elena's notebook contained detailed assessments of my personality traits, including her belief that I lacked the emotional resilience necessary for extended periods without social support and familiar environmental comfort. These assessments created strategic blind spots that could be exploited through positioning choices that violated her expectations about my probable behavioral responses. The mountain community of Cedar Falls, located approximately 300 miles from our metropolitan area, provided ideal strategic positioning for multiple operational requirements. The community featured a population of fewer than 2,000 residents, creating social dynamics that would enable rapid integration while maintaining sufficient privacy for secure operations. The geographic isolation would prevent casual discovery while providing multiple escape routes if circumstances required immediate relocation. The local economy centered around seasonal tourism and small-scale agriculture, creating employment opportunities that would provide legitimate income without requiring extensive background verification or professional references that might compromise operational security. The community infrastructure included reliable internet access and cellular communication coverage, enabling secure digital communications while maintaining contact with legal and financial advisors as strategic circumstances required. The social positioning strategy involved establishing credible identity and background story that would enable community integration without arousing suspicion or generating inquiries that might compromise operational security. The identity needed to provide logical explanation for relocation to the area, while creating social connections that would support extended residence and provide local intelligence about potential security threats or unusual inquiries from outside sources. The professional positioning involved leveraging transferable skills from previous employment experience, while developing new capabilities that would provide value to the local community and establish sustainable income sources. The data analysis expertise from my previous career translated effectively to consulting services for local businesses seeking to improve operational efficiency and marketing effectiveness. These consulting opportunities would provide professional credibility while creating flexible scheduling that would accommodate strategic operational requirements. The social integration approach required systematic development of relationships that would provide community support and information networks without creating dependencies that might compromise operational flexibility. The relationships needed to be authentic and mutually beneficial, while maintaining appropriate boundaries that would prevent excessive personal disclosure or emotional attachments that might interfere with strategic decision-making. The information positioning strategy involved establishing multiple channels for monitoring Elena's activities and gathering intelligence about her responses to the disappearance while maintaining operational security and preventing counter-surveillance. These channels needed to provide comprehensive coverage of Elena's behavioral patterns and communication activities without creating vulnerabilities that would enable her to gather reciprocal intelligence about my location or strategic capabilities. Digital surveillance capabilities included monitoring Elena's social media activities, email communications through previously established shared accounts, and phone communications through technical methods that would remain undetectable while providing comprehensive intelligence about her psychological state and tactical responses. These surveillance activities required professional-level technical expertise combined with systematic operational security protocols that would prevent discovery and counter surveillance. The legal positioning involved establishing relationships with attorneys who specialized in psychological abuse cases and inheritance disputes, while maintaining geographic distance from legal professionals who might have previous contact with Elena or knowledge of our family circumstances. These legal relationships needed to provide immediate access to expert advice and potential representation while maintaining confidentiality about strategic objectives and operational activities. Financial positioning required establishing secure access to resources while developing income sources that would remain undetectable through traditional financial surveillance methods. The positioning involved diversifying financial access across multiple institutions, while creating legitimate business activities that would provide operational funding without dependence on inheritance assets that Elena might attempt to compromise through legal manipulation. The psychological positioning strategy involved systematic development of Elena's perception that she had achieved strategic victory through successful manipulation, while actually providing her with carefully controlled information that would increase her overconfidence and reduce her vigilance regarding potential threats to her campaign. This positioning required sophisticated deception capabilities combined with precise timing that would maintain Elena's false confidence until strategic circumstances were optimal for revealing the true operational situation. Communication positioning involved establishing secure channels that would enable controlled interaction with Elena while maintaining complete operational security, and preventing her from gathering intelligence about location, capabilities, or strategic intentions. These communications needed to provide psychological pressure while avoiding specific information that would enable Elena to adapt her tactics or develop effective countermeasures. The family positioning strategy required systematic analysis of Elena's influence over family relationships, while developing approaches that would gradually expose her manipulation activities without creating direct confrontation that might compromise strategic objectives. This positioning involved careful communication with family members that would plant seeds of doubt about Elena's narratives, while providing alternative information sources that would undermine her credibility over time. Strategic timing positioning involved coordinating the disappearance with Elena's documented timeline for implementing critical phases of her manipulation campaign. The optimal timing would maximize disruption of her planned activities, while preventing her from adapting to changed circumstances with adequate preparation time. Elena's notebook revealed specific dates for appointments with mental health professionals and legal consultations that created time pressures that could be exploited through strategic positioning of the disappearance operation. The evidence positioning strategy involved establishing documentation systems that would systematically record Elena's responses to the disappearance, while maintaining secure storage of materials that would satisfy legal evidentiary standards if formal legal intervention became necessary. This positioning required understanding legal requirements for admissible evidence while developing collection and preservation protocols that would withstand professional scrutiny. Resource positioning involved establishing access to specialized expertise and professional services that would provide strategic advantages while maintaining operational security and preventing Elena from identifying or compromising these relationships. The resources needed to include technical surveillance capabilities, legal representation, financial advisory services, and psychological consultation that would enhance strategic capabilities while providing defensive options if Elena's responses escalated beyond anticipated parameters. The counter-surveillance positioning required systematic analysis of Elena's probable investigative capabilities while implementing measures that would prevent detection of strategic activities and operational positioning. Elena's documented surveillance operations suggested access to professional investigative resources that would require sophisticated countermeasures to neutralize effectively. Security positioning involved establishing multiple layers of protection against potential escalation of Elena's activities beyond psychological manipulation into more direct forms of harassment or interference. These positioning measures included secure communication protocols, identity protection procedures, and physical security arrangements that would maintain operational flexibility while preventing Elena from compromising strategic operations through direct interference. The strategic deception positioning involved creating false information trails that would misdirect Elena's investigative efforts while consuming her resources and psychological energy in unproductive activities. These deception measures needed to be sufficiently sophisticated to withstand professional investigation, while providing strategic advantages through disinformation that would prevent Elena from developing accurate assessments of operational capabilities and strategic positioning. Educational positioning involved establishing access to continued learning opportunities that would enhance strategic capabilities while providing professional development that would create permanent advantages beyond the immediate conflict with Elena. The positioning included access to advanced psychology courses, legal education programs, and business development resources that would serve as valuable assets for future personal and professional endeavors. The operational positioning strategy required systematic coordination of all strategic elements while maintaining flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances and unexpected developments. Elena's psychological profile suggested several probable response patterns to the disappearance, but strategic positioning needed to accommodate unpredictable responses while maintaining operational advantages regardless of her specific tactical choices. Community positioning involved establishing relationships and reputation within Cedar Falls that would provide local support and protection while creating social proof of stability and competence that would counter any potential attempts by Elena to extend her manipulation campaign into the new environment. These relationships needed to be developed systematically while maintaining appropriate operational security boundaries. The strategic positioning represented comprehensive transformation from reactive victim of psychological manipulation into proactive strategic operator, with superior positioning across multiple operational domains. Elena had unknowingly provided extensive education in strategic positioning while creating opportunities for developing advantages that exceeded her capabilities and strategic vision. The positioning strategy demonstrated that conventional disadvantages could be transformed into strategic advantages through innovative thinking combined with systematic preparation and disciplined execution. Elena's manipulation campaign had created circumstances that enabled comprehensive strategic education while providing motivation and resources for developing superior capabilities. Strategic positioning had established the foundation for implementing operations that would demonstrate to Elena exactly how catastrophically she had underestimated both my learning capacity and my determination to achieve comprehensive victory. The disappearance would reveal that strategic positioning could transform any initial disadvantage into ultimate superiority when applied with sufficient intelligence and systematic preparation. Tomorrow would begin the practical demonstration that strategic positioning combined with systematic preparation could enable complete reversal of any psychological manipulation campaign, regardless of its initial sophistication or apparent advantages. The positioning was complete, and operational implementation would prove the effectiveness of strategic thinking applied with disciplined execution and unwavering commitment to comprehensive victory. The establishment of comprehensive intelligence networks requires understanding that information superiority represents the fundamental advantage in psychological warfare operations. Elena's manipulation campaign had achieved success through systematic exploitation of information asymmetries, maintaining comprehensive knowledge of my activities, while preventing me from understanding her true intentions and strategic objectives. Reversing this dynamic demanded developing intelligence capabilities that would provide superior situational awareness while remaining completely undetectable to Elena and any professional resources she might employ for counter-surveillance activities. The foundation of effective intelligence gathering involves recognizing that the most valuable information sources often exist within the ordinary social and professional relationships that targets consider secure and private. Elena had exploited this principle by positioning herself as the concerned family member who naturally received updates about my activities from well-meaning relatives and mutual acquaintances. Developing superior intelligence capabilities required creating similar information channels while implementing advanced technical surveillance methods that would provide comprehensive coverage of Elena's communications and behavioral patterns. The Human Intelligence Network began with systematic analysis of Elena's social and professional relationships to identify individuals who possessed access to information about her activities while remaining sufficiently distant from her inner circle to avoid detection as intelligence sources. These relationships required careful cultivation through indirect approaches that would establish trust in communication channels without arousing suspicion about the true purpose of the interactions. Margaret Hendricks, Elena's administrative assistant at the marketing firm where she maintained part-time employment, represented an ideal intelligence asset due to her access to Elena's professional communications and scheduling information. Margaret had previously expressed frustration about Elena's demanding personality and tendency to create unnecessary workplace drama, suggesting psychological receptivity to discussions that might reveal additional information about Elena's character and activities. The approach to Margaret required sophisticated social engineering that would establish rapport while gradually steering conversations toward topics that would yield valuable intelligence about Elena's behavioral patterns and strategic planning activities. The cultivation began with casual encounters at the coffee shop adjacent to Elena's office building, progressing through seemingly accidental meetings that would create opportunities for developing genuine friendship based on shared interests and mutual professional challenges. The conversations with Margaret revealed that Elena had been exhibiting unusual behavior patterns over the preceding months, including extended private phone calls during work hours, increased requests for schedule flexibility, and apparent preoccupation with personal matters that interfered with her professional responsibilities. Margaret had observed Elena reviewing legal documents and medical journals during lunch breaks, activities that seemed inconsistent with her normal work-related interests and professional duties. These behavioral observations correlated with Elena's documented timeline for implementing advanced phases of her manipulation campaign, providing independent confirmation of her strategic preparations, while revealing specific details about her tactical approaches that were not documented in her notebook. Margaret's intelligence indicated that Elena had been consulting with multiple professional service providers, suggesting a coordination of legal, medical, and possibly investigative resources that exceeded the scope of activities documented in her personal planning materials. The technical surveillance component required establishing comprehensive monitoring capabilities that would provide real-time intelligence about Elena's communications, while maintaining complete operational security and legal compliance with surveillance regulations. The approach involved exploiting vulnerabilities in Elena's digital security practices, while implementing professional-grade technical methods that would remain undetectable through standard counter-surveillance procedures. Elena's documented use of shared family communication devices created opportunities for accessing her email communications and phone records through legitimate methods that would not require illegal surveillance activities. The shared cloud storage accounts that she had established for family photo sharing contained automatic backup features that preserved copies of her personal communications and document storage activities, providing comprehensive intelligence about her strategic planning and tactical coordination efforts. The analysis of Elena's digital communications revealed extensive correspondence with legal professionals specializing in mental health law and inheritance disputes, confirming her systematic preparation for implementing involuntary commitment proceedings while establishing legal standing for challenging my inheritance rights. The communications demonstrated sophisticated understanding of legal procedures combined with detailed strategic planning that extended far beyond the activities documented in her personal notebook. Elena's correspondence with Dr. Patricia Williamson, a forensic psychiatrist who specialized in competency evaluations, revealed that she had been building a case for my mental instability through systematic documentation of fabricated incidents and manufactured behavioral concerns. The email exchanges indicated that Dr. Williamson had been providing guidance about diagnostic criteria and evidence requirements for commitment proceedings while believing that she was advising a concerned family member about legitimate mental health interventions. The financial intelligence revealed that Elena had been consulting with estate attorneys and trust administration specialists about procedures for assuming control of inheritance assets when beneficiaries were deemed mentally incompetent. These consultations demonstrated comprehensive strategic planning that included contingency measures for various legal challenges and procedural obstacles that might arise during implementation of her ultimate objectives. The surveillance of Elena's social media activities provided additional intelligence about her psychological state and strategic confidence levels, while revealing information about her daily routines and social interactions that would be valuable for predicting her responses to the disappearance operation. Elena's online communications demonstrated increasing anticipation about achieving her strategic objectives, combined with apparent confidence that her manipulation campaign had successfully positioned her for inevitable victory. The family intelligence network required careful development of information sources among relatives and family friends, who possessed knowledge about Elena's activities and statements, while remaining unaware of her true manipulative intentions. These sources needed to be cultivated through approaches that would encourage them to share information about Elena's behavior and communications, without realizing that they were providing intelligence for strategic operations. Cousin Rebecca, who maintained regular contact with both Elena and me through family social gatherings, proved to be an invaluable intelligence source due to her observational skills and tendency toward family gossip. Rebecca had noticed significant changes in Elena's behavior and attitude over recent months, including increased criticism of my life choices and frequent references to concerns about my mental health and decision-making capabilities. The conversations with Rebecca revealed that Elena had been systematically preparing family members for the possibility that I might require professional mental health intervention, describing fabricated incidents, and expressing concern about behavioral patterns that supposedly indicated declining psychological stability. These preparation activities correlated directly with Elena's documented strategic timeline, while providing insight into her psychological conditioning techniques and influence operations within family social networks. The professional intelligence gathering involved establishing contact with individuals who had interacted with Elena in business and legal contexts, providing information about her tactical approaches and strategic methodologies that would enhance understanding of her capabilities and operational patterns. These contacts required sophisticated approaches that would extract valuable intelligence without revealing the true purpose of the inquiries or compromising operational security. The investigation of Elena's educational background revealed advanced coursework in psychology and behavioral analysis that had not been mentioned in family discussions about her academic achievements. Elena had completed graduate-level studies in applied psychology with specific focus on behavioral modification techniques and influence psychology, providing theoretical foundation for the sophisticated manipulation methods documented in her strategic planning materials. The analysis of Elena's employment history revealed previous positions that had required expertise in research methodology and data analysis, explaining the scientific approach she had employed for documenting my behavioral patterns and psychological vulnerabilities. Her professional background included consulting work for marketing research firms that specialized in consumer behavior analysis, providing practical experience in systematic observation and psychological assessment techniques. The Financial Intelligence Network involved monitoring Elena's banking activities and expenditure patterns to identify payments for professional services and strategic resources that would indicate the scope of her operational capabilities. The financial analysis revealed significant payments to legal consultation services, private investigation firms, and medical consultation providers that confirmed the comprehensive nature of her manipulation campaign, while revealing potential vulnerabilities in her operational security. The coordination of multiple intelligence sources required systematic information management protocols that would enable comprehensive analysis while maintaining security of sources and methods. The intelligence fusion process involved comparing information from different sources to identify patterns and validate findings, while developing comprehensive situational awareness that would support strategic decision-making during operational implementation. The counterintelligence activities involved systematic assessment of Elena's potential awareness of intelligence-gathering operations, while implementing security measures that would prevent her from detecting surveillance activities or identifying intelligence sources. These measures required sophisticated operational security protocols combined with systematic analysis of Elena's behavioral patterns to identify any indications that she had become suspicious of unusual information requests or social interactions, The psychological intelligence component focused on understanding Elena's emotional state and strategic confidence levels through analysis of her communications and behavioral patterns. The psychological assessment revealed increasing stress and anxiety about timing pressures related to her strategic objectives, suggesting that disruption of her timeline through unexpected developments would produce significant psychological pressure and potentially force tactical errors that could be exploited for strategic advantage. The strategic intelligence analysis indicated that Elena's manipulation campaign represented more sophisticated and comprehensive psychological warfare operation than initially understood through analysis of her notebook alone. The additional intelligence revealed extensive coordination with professional resources and systematic preparation for legal and medical interventions that exceeded the scope of activities that could be countered through informal defensive measures. The intelligence network had established comprehensive situational awareness that would enable strategic operations with superior information advantages, while maintaining complete operational security and source protection. Elena remained completely unaware that her activities were under systematic surveillance, while continuing to operate under false assumptions about her information security and strategic position. The development of invisible connections had transformed the intelligence disadvantage that had enabled Elena's manipulation campaign into comprehensive information superiority that would support strategic operations with unprecedented accuracy and tactical precision. The network would provide real-time intelligence about Elena's responses to operational developments while maintaining security of sources and methods that would prevent counter-surveillance or tactical adaptation. Tomorrow would begin the practical demonstration that superior intelligence capabilities could enable complete reversal of any psychological manipulation campaign regardless of its initial advantages or apparent sophistication. The invisible connections had been established, and operational implementation would prove the effectiveness of comprehensive intelligence gathering applied with systematic methodology and unwavering commitment to strategic excellence. The systematic analysis of Elena's documented strategies and behavioral patterns revealed multiple exploitable vulnerabilities that could be transformed into decisive strategic advantages through precise tactical implementation. Elena's comprehensive manipulation campaign contained inherent weaknesses that emerged from her overconfidence in her psychological assessment capabilities and her fundamental misunderstanding of how systematic preparation could transform an apparent victim into a superior strategic opponent. The calculation of these hidden opportunities required advanced analytical methodologies combined with innovative strategic thinking that would identify tactical possibilities that Elena had not anticipated or prepared to counter. The psychological vulnerability analysis began with detailed examination of Elena's emotional investment in maintaining control over family narratives and social perceptions. Her documented obsession with positioning herself as the responsible, competent family member while portraying me as increasingly unstable represented a fundamental psychological dependency that could be exploited through strategic operations designed to reverse these established narratives. Elena's sense of identity and self-worth had become systematically linked to her success in maintaining these carefully constructed social dynamics. The intelligence gathered through multiple sources revealed that Elena's confidence in her manipulation abilities had created significant blind spots regarding alternative interpretations of family dynamics and potential challenges to her strategic positioning. She had invested 3 years in building specific narratives about my psychological state and her own competence, creating psychological commitments that would be extremely difficult for her to abandon, even when confronted with contradictory evidence about the true nature of our relationship dynamics. Elena's documented timeline and strategic planning materials revealed precise coordination requirements that created critical dependencies and potential failure points throughout her operational structure. Her planned sequence of legal consultations, medical evaluations, and family interventions required specific timing and coordination that would become vulnerable to disruption if any component of her strategy encountered unexpected obstacles or delays. The complexity of her strategic approach had created multiple opportunities for systematic interference that would cascade through her entire operational framework. The financial analysis revealed that Elena's campaign had required substantial investment in professional consultation services, legal preparation activities, and surveillance operations that had significantly impacted her personal financial resources. Her documented expenditures indicated that she had committed approximately $47,000 to supporting her manipulation campaign over the preceding 18 months, creating financial pressures that would increase her desperation to achieve successful outcomes within her planned timeline. The legal intelligence demonstrated that Elena's approach to involuntary commitment proceedings contained several procedural vulnerabilities that could be exploited through strategic preparation and expert legal representation. The evidentiary standards required for psychiatric commitment demanded documentation that would be subject to professional scrutiny by qualified mental health practitioners who possessed training in identifying fabricated or manipulated psychological assessments. Dr. Williamson's correspondence with Elena revealed that the forensic psychiatrist had been providing guidance based on Elena's descriptions of my supposed behavioral problems, without conducting independent evaluation or verification of the reported incidents. This reliance on single-source information represented a significant vulnerability in Elena's evidentiary foundation that could be systematically dismantled through comprehensive documentation of her deceptive practices and manipulation techniques. The social network analysis identified multiple family members and mutual acquaintances who had been receiving carefully edited information about my psychological state, without understanding Elena's strategic motivations or systematic deception practices. These individuals represented potential allies who could be educated about Elena's manipulation campaign through strategic revelation of documented evidence and systematic explanation of her psychological warfare methodologies. The technical surveillance capabilities revealed that Elena had been employing more sophisticated monitoring methods than initially understood, including GPS tracking devices on my vehicle and advanced digital surveillance of my communication activities. However, her technical surveillance operations had been implemented with significant security vulnerabilities that could be exploited for counter-surveillance purposes, while providing opportunities for systematic disinformation campaigns designed to mislead her about my actual activities and strategic preparations. The operational security analysis demonstrated that Elena's confidence in her surveillance capabilities had created systematic patterns in her intelligence-gathering activities that could be predicted and manipulated through strategic deception operations. Her documented behavioral patterns indicated specific times and methods for conducting surveillance activities, creating opportunities for controlled information release that would provide her with false intelligence, while concealing actual strategic preparations and operational planning. The psychological warfare opportunities emerged from understanding that Elena's manipulation techniques were based on specific assumptions about my emotional vulnerabilities and behavioral predictability that would become obsolete once I began operating with complete knowledge of her strategic objectives and systematic preparation for psychological conflict. Her documented assessment of my personality traits and likely responses to various pressure situations had been developed while I remained unaware of her manipulation activities, and responded with natural emotional reactions rather than strategic calculation. The strategic timing analysis revealed that Elena's planned implementation schedule contained multiple coordination requirements that would become increasingly vulnerable to disruption as her timeline progressed toward critical phases. Her coordination with legal professionals, medical practitioners, and family preparation activities required precise sequencing that would be extremely difficult to maintain if unexpected developments forced adaptation of her strategic approach or modification of her operational timeline. The communication interception opportunities arose from Elena's reliance on digital communication channels and shared family communication systems that provided multiple access points for monitoring her strategic coordination activities while gathering intelligence about her tactical adaptations and contingency planning efforts. Her systematic use of email and text messaging for coordinating professional consultations created comprehensive documentation of her manipulation campaign that could be preserved as evidence for potential legal proceedings or family interventions. The financial leverage analysis identified specific vulnerabilities in Elena's resource allocation and expenditure patterns that could be exploited through strategic operations designed to increase her operational costs while simultaneously reducing the effectiveness of her professional consultation activities. Her documented payments to legal and medical consultation services represented ongoing financial commitments that would become increasingly difficult to maintain if her strategic timeline encountered significant delays or complications. The reputation management opportunities became apparent through analysis of Elena's systematic efforts to position herself as the concerned, responsible family member, while undermining my credibility within family and social networks. These positioning efforts had created significant vulnerability to strategic revelation of her true manipulative intentions, as the contrast between her presented persona and documented psychological warfare activities would create powerful cognitive dissonance among family members and mutual acquaintances. The professional relationship analysis revealed that Elena's deceptive interactions with legal and medical professionals represented potential sources of ethical and professional complications that could be exploited through strategic revelation of her true intentions and systematic documentation of her manipulation techniques. The professionals who had been providing consultation services while believing they were supporting legitimate mental health interventions would face significant ethical concerns upon learning that their expertise had been weaponized for psychological abuse and financial manipulation. The counter-surveillance opportunities emerged from understanding Elena's technical surveillance capabilities and operational patterns, while developing superior counterintelligence methods that would enable systematic monitoring of her activities, while preventing reciprocal surveillance of strategic preparations and operational planning. The technical vulnerabilities in her surveillance operations could be exploited for implementing comprehensive disinformation campaigns that would provide Elena with false intelligence while concealing actual strategic activities. The legal defensive opportunities included multiple procedural and evidentiary challenges that could be implemented to neutralize Elena's planned commitment proceedings, while simultaneously exposing her manipulation campaign to legal scrutiny and potential criminal investigation. The documentation of her systematic psychological abuse and fraudulent preparation of medical evidence represented grounds for pursuing legal action that would completely reverse her strategic position, while establishing legal protections against future manipulation attempts. The family intervention opportunities involved strategic approaches for educating family members about Elena's manipulation techniques, while providing documented evidence of her systematic deception and psychological warfare activities. The revelation process required careful sequencing and presentation methodologies that would overcome the psychological conditioning that Elena had been implementing, while building family support for defensive and potentially offensive legal measures. The strategic alliance possibilities included potential coordination with other individuals who had been targeted by Elena's manipulation techniques, or similar psychological warfare campaigns conducted by other family members or intimate partners. The development of these strategic relationships would provide additional resources and expertise while creating support networks that would enhance operational capabilities and psychological resilience during extended conflict periods. The media and public exposure opportunities represented advanced tactical options that could be implemented if Elena's responses to strategic operations escalated beyond psychological manipulation into more direct forms of harassment or legal action. The documentation of her systematic manipulation campaign, combined with expert analysis of her psychological warfare techniques, could provide valuable educational resources for mental health professionals and legal practitioners, while establishing public awareness of sophisticated psychological abuse methodologies. The educational and professional development opportunities included systematic documentation of strategic methodologies and tactical innovations that would provide valuable expertise for future personal and professional endeavors. The practical experience gained through implementing advanced psychological warfare operations would establish capabilities and credibility that could be applied to consulting opportunities, educational initiatives, and leadership roles that required expertise in conflict resolution and strategic planning. The long-term strategic positioning analysis revealed that successful implementation of operations against Elena's manipulation campaign would establish permanent advantages in family dynamics, while creating documented precedent for responding to future psychological manipulation attempts. The transformation from victim to strategic victor would fundamentally alter family power dynamics, while establishing reputation for sophisticated strategic capabilities that would deter future manipulation attempts by any family members or associates. The comprehensive calculation of hidden opportunities demonstrated that Elena's elaborate manipulation campaign had actually created the strategic foundation for her complete defeat through systematic exploitation of vulnerabilities that emerged from her overconfidence and strategic blind spots. The apparent disadvantage of being targeted for psychological manipulation had been transformed into comprehensive strategic advantage through systematic analysis and innovative tactical planning. The hidden opportunities represented transformational possibilities that extended far beyond simple defensive measures or tactical victories over Elena's immediate manipulation attempts. The strategic potential included establishing permanent psychological and social advantages while developing expertise and capabilities that would provide lasting benefits for future personal and professional endeavors. Tomorrow would begin the practical implementation of strategic operations designed to exploit these calculated opportunities, while demonstrating to Elena exactly how catastrophically she had underestimated the transformational potential that emerges when systematic preparation encounters genuine strategic opportunity. The transformation from psychological warfare victim to expert strategic operator required systematic development of specialized capabilities that extended far beyond conventional self-defense measures. Elena's comprehensive manipulation campaign had unknowingly provided access to advanced educational opportunities in psychological warfare, behavioral analysis, and strategic planning that would have been impossible to obtain through traditional academic or professional channels. The development of invisible expertise involved converting this unprecedented educational access into practical capabilities that would provide permanent advantages in psychological conflict situations, while establishing professional-level competence in domains that few individuals ever have opportunity to master. The psychological warfare expertise began with intensive study of advanced manipulation techniques and defensive countermeasures that went far beyond Elena's documented methodologies. Her notebook provided foundational curriculum, but comprehensive expertise required understanding the theoretical frameworks and empirical research underlying behavioral modification techniques, influence psychology, and systematic approaches to psychological conditioning. The academic literature in applied psychology contained extensive documentation of manipulation methodologies that had been developed for legitimate therapeutic and research purposes, but could be adapted for both offensive and defensive psychological warfare applications. The systematic study of cognitive behavioral therapy principles revealed sophisticated understanding of how human psychological responses could be modified through controlled environmental manipulation and systematic reinforcement schedules. These therapeutic techniques, when understood from a strategic perspective, provided comprehensive frameworks for identifying psychological vulnerabilities while developing immunity to manipulation attempts. The expertise in CBT principles enabled analysis of Elena's documented techniques while developing counter-conditioning approaches that would eliminate the psychological dependencies she had been cultivating. The advanced study of social psychology research provided scientific foundation for understanding group dynamics, authority influence, and social proof mechanisms that Elena had been exploiting within family and social networks. The research literature contained detailed analysis of persuasion techniques, conformity pressures, and influence operations that could be systematically applied for either constructive or destructive purposes, depending on the strategic objectives and ethical frameworks guiding their implementation. The expertise in behavioral analysis techniques enabled systematic assessment of Elena's psychological profile while developing predictive models for her likely responses to various tactical interventions. The behavioral analysis training included systematic observation methodologies, pattern recognition techniques, and statistical analysis approaches that would enable real-time assessment of psychological states and tactical adaptation based on observed behavioral changes and communication patterns. The legal expertise development focused on comprehensive understanding of mental health law, involuntary commitment procedures, and inheritance dispute regulations that would enable sophisticated defensive legal strategies, while identifying offensive legal opportunities for pursuing accountability measures against Elena's psychological abuse campaign. The legal education required intensive study of case law, procedural requirements, and evidentiary standards that governed psychological abuse cases and fraudulent legal proceedings. The consultation with specialized attorneys provided practical education in legal strategy development, evidence preparation, and court presentation techniques that would enable effective legal representation while understanding the strategic considerations that determine successful outcomes in complex psychological abuse cases. The legal expertise included understanding procedural vulnerabilities that could be exploited for defensive purposes while identifying potential grounds for pursuing criminal charges related to Elena's systematic psychological abuse and fraudulent documentation activities. The financial expertise development involved comprehensive study of trust fund administration, estate planning regulations, and asset protection strategies that would enable sophisticated defensive measures against Elena's inheritance manipulation attempts, while developing long-term financial planning capabilities that would provide permanent security regardless of the immediate conflict outcomes. The financial education included understanding complex legal structures, tax implications, and regulatory requirements that governed inherited assets and family financial planning arrangements. The consultation with estate planning specialists and financial advisors provided practical education in asset protection techniques, legal defensive strategies, and investment methodologies that would enable sophisticated financial management while protecting against various forms of financial manipulation and legal challenge. The financial expertise included understanding international financial structures and alternative asset classes that could provide security and growth opportunities beyond traditional investment approaches. The technical surveillance expertise required systematic study of electronic communication monitoring, digital security protocols, and counter-surveillance methodologies that would enable professional-level intelligence gathering while maintaining comprehensive operational security. The technical education involved understanding encryption technologies, communication interception techniques, and digital forensics methodologies that would support sophisticated intelligence operations while preventing counter-surveillance by opponents with professional investigative capabilities. The practical application of technical surveillance capabilities included developing secure communication networks, implementing comprehensive digital security protocols, and establishing systematic intelligence gathering operations that would provide real-time situational awareness while maintaining complete operational security. The technical expertise enabled systematic monitoring of Elena's communication activities while implementing sophisticated counter-surveillance measures that would prevent detection of strategic preparation and operational planning activities. The strategic planning expertise involved intensive study of military strategic planning methodologies, business strategy development frameworks, and conflict resolution theories that would enable systematic approach to complex multi-phase operations with multiple simultaneous objectives and dynamic opposition forces. The strategic planning education included understanding resource allocation principles, timing coordination requirements, and contingency planning methodologies that would enable sophisticated operational management under uncertainty and pressure. The practical application of strategic planning capabilities involved developing comprehensive operational plans with detailed tactical coordination, resource management protocols, and adaptive response frameworks that would enable successful implementation of complex psychological warfare operations, while maintaining flexibility to respond to unexpected developments and opposition countermeasures. The strategic expertise included understanding psychological pressure management and decision-making optimization techniques that would maintain tactical effectiveness under extreme stress conditions. The communication expertise development focused on advanced persuasion techniques, psychological influence methods, and strategic deception capabilities that would enable sophisticated information warfare while maintaining credibility and relationship management across diverse stakeholder groups. The communication education involved understanding linguistic analysis, nonverbal communication interpretation, and systematic approaches to message development that would maximize psychological impact while achieving specific strategic objectives. The practical application of communication expertise included developing systematic approaches to family relationship management, professional relationship cultivation, and strategic alliance development that would provide comprehensive support networks while neutralizing Elena's influence operations within shared social and family environments. The communication capabilities enabled strategic revelation of Elena's manipulation activities while building support for defensive and potentially offensive measures against her psychological warfare campaign. The research and analysis expertise involved systematic study of intelligence analysis methodologies, pattern recognition techniques, and predictive modeling approaches that would enable sophisticated assessment of complex situations while developing accurate forecasts of opponent behavioral patterns and strategic adaptations. The research education included understanding statistical analysis techniques, data visualization methods, and systematic approaches to hypothesis testing that would support evidence-based strategic decision-making. The practical application of research and analysis capabilities enabled comprehensive assessment of Elena's psychological profile, strategic capabilities, and tactical vulnerabilities, while developing predictive models for her likely responses to various intervention strategies. The research expertise included systematic documentation methodologies and evidence preservation techniques that would satisfy legal evidentiary standards while supporting potential future legal proceedings or professional accountability measures. The crisis management expertise required understanding psychological stress responses, decision-making optimization under pressure, and systematic approaches to maintaining operational effectiveness during high-stakes conflict situations. The crisis management education involves studying psychological resilience techniques, stress inoculation training, and systematic approaches to maintaining strategic clarity when experiencing extreme emotional pressure or tactical uncertainty. The practical application of crisis management capabilities enabled systematic preparation for various escalation scenarios while developing adaptive response protocols that would maintain strategic advantages regardless of Elena's tactical choices or unexpected developments in family, legal, or professional domains. The crisis management expertise included understanding when to escalate or de-escalate tactical approaches while maintaining focus on ultimate strategic objectives. The leadership and influence expertise involved systematic study of organizational behavior, team coordination methodologies, and systematic approaches to building consensus and motivation within complex stakeholder environments. The leadership education included understanding psychological motivation techniques, conflict resolution methodologies, and systematic approaches to building support for strategic initiatives across diverse interest groups and personality types. The practical application of leadership capabilities enabled systematic development of family and professional alliances while neutralizing Elena's influence operations and building support for defensive and accountability measures. The leadership expertise included understanding how to coordinate complex multi-stakeholder operations while maintaining confidentiality and operational security requirements. The educational and training expertise involved systematic study of adult learning principles, skill development methodologies, and systematic approaches to knowledge transfer that would enable effective education of others while building comprehensive understanding of complex technical and strategic subjects. The educational expertise included understanding how to structure learning experiences, assess competency development, and systematically build expertise in specialized domains through practical application and iterative improvement. The practical application of educational capabilities enabled systematic documentation of strategic methodologies and tactical innovations, while developing comprehensive training materials that could provide value for other individuals facing similar psychological manipulation situations. The educational expertise included understanding how to present complex strategic concepts through accessible communication methods, while maintaining technical accuracy and practical applicability. The consultation and advisory expertise involved understanding how to assess complex strategic situations, develop comprehensive recommendations, and provide expert guidance for individuals and organizations facing sophisticated psychological manipulation or strategic conflict challenges. The consultation education included understanding client relationship management, strategic communication protocols, and systematic approaches to developing and presenting expert recommendations for complex strategic challenges. The development of invisible expertise represented transformation from psychological warfare victim into professional-level strategic operator, with capabilities that exceeded Elena's manipulation abilities while providing permanent advantages for future personal and professional endeavors. The expertise development had been achieved through systematic application of advanced learning methodologies, while maintaining complete operational security and preventing Elena from understanding the comprehensive transformation that had occurred during her assumed period of strategic dominance. The invisible expertise would provide foundation for implementing strategic operations that would demonstrate to Elena exactly how catastrophically she had underestimated the learning capacity and strategic potential that emerged when systematic preparation encountered genuine educational opportunity. Tomorrow would begin practical demonstration that invisible expertise could enable complete reversal of any psychological manipulation campaign when applied with strategic precision and unwavering commitment to comprehensive victory. The moment of strategic implementation arrived at precisely 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, when Elena's scheduled phone call failed to connect to my voicemail system, as it had every day for the preceding 3 months. The systematic routine of her daily surveillance check had become so predictable that its absence would immediately signal that fundamental changes had occurred in the operational environment. This calculated disruption represented the first tactical implementation of comprehensive strategic preparation, marking the transition from invisible preparation to active psychological warfare operations designed to exploit Elena's documented vulnerabilities, while demonstrating the superiority of systematic strategic thinking over spontaneous manipulation tactics. The final preparation phase had been completed during the preceding 72 hours through systematic execution of predetermined protocols that would eliminate any possibility of detection, while establishing comprehensive operational security for extended covert activities. The apartment had been systematically sanitized of all personal belongings and identifying materials, while implementing sophisticated misdirection techniques that would prevent Elena from determining my actual destination or strategic capabilities through forensic analysis of abandoned materials. The financial preparation had included transferring accessible assets to secure accounts that Elena could not monitor or compromise, while establishing alternative income sources that would provide operational funding without dependence on traditional employment or family financial resources. The financial security measures included establishing international banking relationships and cryptocurrency holdings that would enable sustained operations regardless of Elena's potential attempts to interfere with domestic financial access or legal challenges to inheritance assets. The communication protocols had been established to enable systematic monitoring of Elena's responses while maintaining complete operational security and preventing counter-surveillance of strategic activities. The secure communication networks included encrypted messaging systems, anonymous internet access capabilities, and systematic intelligence gathering protocols that would provide real-time situational awareness while remaining undetectable through standard counterintelligence methods. The transportation arrangements involved multiple sequential vehicle changes and systematic route obfuscation that would prevent tracking through GPS surveillance, traffic camera analysis, or traditional investigative methods. The transportation security included comprehensive counter-surveillance protocols and systematic misdirection techniques that would eliminate Elena's ability to determine my actual destination while creating false intelligence trails that would consume her investigative resources without providing actionable information. The strategic timing coordination had been calculated to maximize psychological impact while disrupting Elena's documented timeline at the moment when adaptation would be most difficult for her to implement effectively. Her scheduled appointment with Dr. Williamson for final psychological assessment discussions was planned for the following Thursday, creating time pressure that would force her to proceed with incomplete information or postpone critical strategic milestones that had required months of preparation and professional coordination. The psychological impact design involved systematic exploitation of Elena's documented personality traits and behavioral patterns, while creating uncertainty that would interfere with her strategic decision-making capabilities. Elena's obsessive need for control and comprehensive information about my activities would transform my sudden disappearance into a source of extreme psychological pressure that would increase exponentially as her inability to locate me extended beyond her anticipated response timeframes. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.